Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar from MadeTech as part of Digital Innovation Week from Digital Leaders. The title of this webinar is Forward, Ever, Backward, Never, How We Transform Public Services. So how this session will run. We expect this session to last about 40 to 45 minutes, and we hope you enjoy what we have to say. We're going to have a panel discussion. We'll do introductions in a moment. We'll give you the topics and then discuss them with some examples that we've put together for you. If you've got any questions throughout the talk, please use the contact details provided at the end of the session, or alternatively, please leave a comment on the chat and we will contact you after the event. So, introductions, who we are. My name is James Buckley. I'm the head of practice for digital transformation here in MadeTech. I have many years' experience in the public sector, and I'm delighted to be with you here today. And I'll pass over to Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Beckett. I'm a lead consultant in the digital transformation practice. I've also got a lot of experience in central government and just came from the Central Digital and Data Office and Cabinet Office.
And hi, my name is Tim Bardell. I'm the Executive Director of Capabilities here at MadeTech. That means I look after all of our delivery practices. I've got many years' experience of being both a customer of transformation and also delivering transformation as a consultant. So hopefully we can bring some of that out in the conversation.
Great, thanks guys. So let's have a look at the agenda. So we've broken the agenda down for the talk today into a number of sections. So we're going to do a bit of an introduction first about what is transformation, and talk about definitions and what some of the features of transformation are. Then we're going to do a little bit talking about what we call the burning platform, what we can achieve when, as we describe it, the guardrails are taken away. Why do we have boundaries, and what are the pros and cons of those? Then we've got an interesting section where we'll talk about journeys and talk about delivery life cycle examples. So the two that we're really interested in talking about today are both around health and justice. So we'll talk about some of the complexities and approaches there. And there are two very interesting examples, we feel, because they're in very different states of maturity. And then finally, we'll conclude and wrap up, and we'll talk about some of the great things that we do here in MadeTech and how we can help you with your transformation journey. So to kick off, defining transformation.
So yeah, I mean, I guess it's always important to really think through what we mean when we start talking about transformation, because there's always a temptation to think of it as making kind of minor changes, as modernizing, rather than actually creating a step change in the experience for citizens, the efficiency of processes. So maybe that's something we can kind of delve into a bit and talk about some of the challenges that we know we're facing across the entirety of the public sector, in terms of the transformation that we need to create. So, kind of challenges at the moment. What are we seeing in terms of public sector and where we need transformation?
So we know the public sector is under the cosh at the moment. We know that governmental departments, their budgets are really under pressure. We're talking about we're hearing about cuts of in the region of 15% per year for the next few years. And we want to talk about digital transformation in that context, because we want to look at and maybe point out some opportunities to maximize budget allocation on the brink of where we are economically and what that could look like. But I guess if we talk just a little bit more about how we define digital transformation and what we think some of those features are. Tim, from your perspective?
So for me, the transformation is always about creating that step change. The challenge that I find is making sure that as we're making those changes, that the stakeholders actually see change happening as we go along. so that it's not a years ahead. It's a, how do we create that momentum of change? How do we create that transformation journey rather than it just being an endpoint that's kind of some time out in the future? So I guess there's a number of areas that we can go in terms of tackling that, in terms of looking for new opportunities, in terms of driving growth. What are some of the kind of the things that we've seen in terms of our transformation journeys?
Absolutely, but for me, it's about unblocking newer opportunities. It's about driving growth. It's about, as well, I think, taking this whole system enterprise view, not just taking it from it's digital, doing it to the rest of the business. It should be about digital enabling the rest of the business. So getting those sightlines right, looking at some of the approaches on how we define our vision and mission, intelligent decision making, and what are the insights for that, how we integrate processes and technology, and talent. Always with talent, a huge feature across the public sector at the moment. We know this. There really is a struggle going on, and huge turnover of really capable digital staff.
And what is it that you think that we've seen where we've helped set the tone in terms of creating that change? Tom, I know you've got a lot of experience in that space.
Yeah, so I would say that when you're looking at a digital transformation, you have to know where you're going, kind of what is the aim of the transformation, and how will you know when you've been successful? And I think a lot of the time in the early stages of one of these projects, it's about kind of being clear around that, because I think sometimes people can assume that just want everything to work right, but actually you have to make decisions in a digital transformation. Something you might need to weigh, one target against another. And it's only when you've got that sort of clear vision and mission at the beginning of a transformation that you can then start kind of setting the route that you will take to get to the promised land.
And I guess also through the lenses of different stakeholders within that, because articulating a journey in terms of a cost saving may be really important from a department point of view, but not so much from an end user point of view.
Absolutely that. Yeah, the end users will be focused on making their lives easier, making their jobs more effective, those types of things. But you're right, you can save money and give people that kind of better life experience at the same time.
So moving on, we want to, on the back of that, talk in a little bit more detail about what we call the burning platform. So in this section, we thought it would be really helpful to use some case studies as examples to highlight this. And we talk about things like, well, what if we didn't have all of that assurance and approvals wrap that we have to work our way through in delivering complex transformational change? So we've got some examples here that we want to talk about, and it gives you a flavor of it. And I know, Tom, this is an area that you're particularly interested in. So the pandemic was a big driver, wasn't it?
Pandemic was a huge driver, and there was, it was almost overnight that we had to set up, kind of brand new processes, systems, approaches to deal with, a very quickly changing situation. And that meant in central government that there was a real need to look at the assurance that was in place already and see what we could take away to speed up the delivery of that type of process. So an example of that was the wage subsidy scheme, the furlough scheme, that was set up in 6 weeks. And it didn't go through a load of assurance. It didn't go through multiple stages. There weren't loads of boards signing everything off all the way through the journey. It just needed to be delivered extremely quickly. And that carried on with other similar sort of pandemic related services, such as the coronavirus job retention scheme, and the self-employment income support scheme, and things like the job retention scheme. It's like £61 billion was claimed by 1.3 million employers, and that supported 11.5 million people. And I think all of us will remember Eat Out to Help Out as well. That was 800 million pounds was paid out to support the hospitality industry. And that was 161 million covers in those restaurants. You know, all of these things were delivered in, you know, in periods of weeks in an extremely difficult environment.
So is the lesson that we should just do away with governance, with assurance, and let rip?
Well, I'm sure that that would be a lot of people's views, and that they would be very pleased if that was the way that it worked. But and you know, you can see that with something like GDS as well. Like GDS had to respond to the pandemic. They don't, you know, I'm not going to say GDS doesn't have governance, but the people who need to update the information on gov.uk don't need to go through hundreds of different areas, and that gives them a responsiveness that is really, you know, kind of beneficial. But you're right, Tim, that there are reasons why that bureaucracy is there. It's not there just to frustrate people and annoy people. It's there for a really good reason. I mean, during more recently, there's another example where DLUC were working with to rehome people who are coming over from Ukraine. And again, like the team needed to be empowered to make decisions quickly. And that kind of gave them the space to be able to deliver an MVP within a couple of weeks, which is, astonishingly quickly. And if you were going to go through a lot of assurance, you wouldn't be able to have that ability to deliver something within that speed. You know, we at Maytech provided, 6 SC people to deliver that within 5 days. And there is a need in on some occasions in government to do that quick response. But actually, it's not always the case that you need to respond at that type of speed. Speed's useful, and certainly within a project, we have sprints because if you get the momentum, you can deliver quickly. But it's not always the case that sort of removing these guidelines is the best solution for absolutely everybody. Because there's pros and cons to bureaucracy. Yeah. And we talk about the cons all the time. It will slow me down. I need to get, this thing signed off, and I need to take it to a board, and I need to write this big long business case. All of this type of stuff is a frustration. But it's worth bearing in mind that, in this digital world that we live in, a form of bureaucracy is agile working. It's things like, Scrum and Kanban are forms of bureaucracy, but they are ones that teams can see are enabling them to do the work effectively. Whereas I think when we think about bureaucracy, it's often something that comes from outside and tells us the way that the world should be. But actually, that type of bureaucratic process can give you the empowerment within your program to deliver what you need to do. So you are kind of asking permission to move along. But once you've got that permission, if you've asked for it right, if you've asked for what you actually need to deliver, you can get that empowerment, and you can use the good advice that you might be getting from that assurance process, and it enables you to do something better than you would otherwise have been able to do.
It introduces this, doesn't it, an interesting point about complex program delivery in the public sector. And in fact, it's very often people will say, well, we need to be agile. We need to be a lot more agile because we've got too much waterfall bureaucracy. But actually, and I think you described it really well when we were chatting about this earlier, Tom, the money part of it is quite waterfall.
Yes.
And you have a lot of assurance and approvals because you're spending a lot of public money. Whereas you can still have within that process in a complex delivery, agile delivery, where teams can engage really well with users and move at pace and fail fast, because that's what it should be all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's using the bureaucracy to give you that empowerment that you need to be successful. And I think if we think about the sort of pros and cons of bureaucracy, like we often think about all of those cons, the kind of slowing down of delivery and et cetera, but actually there's pros to that bureaucracy as well. In a large organization, you can't get everybody into a single room and have a stand-up meeting every morning and kind of make quick decisions, because lots of people need to be involved. And so you bring that bureaucracy in order to help you be able to make those decisions. And I think that when I think of service assessments as well, that we think again of that kind of bureaucratic process as potentially sort of slowing you down at the end of alpha, at the end of beta. But actually that's an assessment in which a lot of that team are speaking on behalf of the user. They're, it's bringing the user's voice back into that service. And if the team's been doing a load of user research, then they're happy to talk about that. They love talking about the user's voice, and it's great kind of having somebody that understands that. But if they haven't been successful and they haven't been speaking to those users, we need to understand that so that we don't put something out in front of the public that hasn't had that type of transformation.
And I guess that's kind of comes back to the point that I touched on earlier, which is in any of these big transformation programs, having those kind of regular dividends, so stakeholders see change happening is really important. What you just described is exactly that, creating that overall framework that then there's the guide rails are there to get on and deliver and have those very quick deliveries that the stakeholders can see.
Yes, exactly. Like, you don't want the bureaucracy to be involved in your day-to-day running of the program. That's the bureaucracy not operating well. But there is a kind of check at the beginning and a check at the end can actually empower you, because you then have got the permission to continue with the program, but you've also got the stamp of approval at the end that you've been successful and have delivered what you said you were going to deliver. Absolutely.
And so, sorry, moving on. We want to talk about some of the journey examples now, don't we? So the examples that we mentioned at the start that we're really keen to have a chat about now is two examples using health and justice, and how they're quite different as sort of citizen journeys, and they illustrate potentially in their own way truly transformational change opportunities. So the first one is when somebody has a baby, and looking at all the different parts of that journey, from baby to grave, you might say, and looking at the different sorts of services that people will need as that child grows up, and what are the different organizations that get involved in those journey steps. So, for example, if we say, looking at from NHS, local authority point of view, and all the DWP services to support new parents from when they leave hospital and they're registering a birth, to all of the DWP benefits and support services that they should have access to. For me, certainly, part of the difficulty with this journey is that it's very much pull, not push sets of services. And there is a difficulty because unless you are quite adept at navigating and understanding where to find the information, you don't know what services you're entitled to. So what are the solutions here to improve this journey? And what are the potential benefits to society? And I think that's something that we want to explore in a bit more detail. So looking at registering a birth, what are the different stages here that you've got? So if somebody leaves hospital, new parents leave hospital with their child, what are the things they need to know, and how do they find that out?
Well, I think a lot of the time they're just kind of given paper at the hospital that tells them you need to register here, you need to register here, you need to register here. And I think, it's thinking about this from the user's perspective. It feels like it's very disjointed that there are these local authorities involved, there's DWP involved, there's HMRC involved, all of these different touch points with different organizations. And I guess as a user, I shouldn't need to know about all of those different organizations in order to do this large life event. And it should be, as you say, a sort of push that, I've had a baby, government. So why don't you know what the next steps that I need to take are? You've surely got all of this information together. Why can't you support me in this way? But as we know, actually this information is all stored by the government, but it's not all stored in one place by the government with easy access to everybody.
And I guess that's a challenge, because the government, in this instance, the new parents don't know all the things that they need to know, but then that carries on through life. It's a while ago since I had to register the birth of my children, because they're now in their 20s, but equally, as you know, as they've gone through kind of growing up and becoming adults, there's a whole lot of terminology that they just don't understand, that they've been lucky that I've been there to explain a lot of it to them. But I guess there's a lot of people who are growing up who don't necessarily have that somebody to lead them through that, and that's where that joined up journey, that push, as you say, rather than pull, is so important.
It's very important, because we talk about what are the economic benefits here, what are the better life chances for children and underrepresented groups. Particularly, you know, we've got vulnerable groups of people in society, people who need to register with the Home Office for immigration and asylum, and those applicants, how do they access the services that they need? And how do they know how to register for schools and what relevant benefits they need? And even as the child gets older, registering for a national insurance number, how do they go through something as simple as applying for a driving license, and so it goes on. So there's a lot of join up opportunity in this scenario, and we think that there's a lot of transformational opportunity built in there.
And you're right, that is true transformation, that ability to join up, that ability to be there when the person needs it, that's transformational.
And so the other example that we wanted to touch on was criminal justice. This is quite a different sort of case study, if you like, because there has been quite a lot of work that's been going on across the criminal justice organizations for some time. I think a lot of lessons have been learned over quite a number of years. It's slow, it's difficult, and it's very expensive. And I think a lot of the CJOs, criminal justice organizations, have found that over quite a period of time. But if you look at the life cycle of a crime and the agencies involved in the stages of a criminal case, from arrest to charge to prosecution, case going into the court system, whether the defendant is convicted or acquitted, sentencing, probation, prison service if appropriate, and what about the victim in all of this, and victim services. So how does the data for a case get shared with the right agencies and parties to the case at the right time to action each stage of that? So what we know about what's happening at the moment, we know that there is a digital case file sharing that happens from police to CPS. And lots of us will have heard about the links that CPS have into HMCTS and the building of the common platform that has been progressing over some period of time in the court service. So common platform is a digital case management system. It allows all parties in a case secure access to case information in one place, including judiciary, defense parties, CPS themselves, court and probation staff, and looking at that journey for a criminal case, what do we think are the benefits to society going through that journey?
Well, I mean, you know, this system has obviously been running for hundreds and hundreds of years in various different ways. But like, what happens when, you know, the question that you're asking, like, what happens when you oil that? What happens when it gets easier and quicker? You know, there's things like, you know, getting justice faster, and especially with the sort of court backlogs at the moment, that's a really important point for government at the moment. But things like tackling crime, there's economic benefits, and you can save a lot of money. And so there is a strong case for this transformation to be made. But it's not an easy thing, and it can be very expensive and time consuming.
So we understand that there is really great progress made in this space already. And I understand that when the next year or so, all courts in England and Wales will be using the common platform, and there will be a rollout of enhanced features for case progression as that happens. And digital policing, we believe are working with lots of CGS partners on joining up systems to enhance our video-enabled justice and make more of these national systems suitable for mobile use for officers on the street. Access to PNC for checks, to the visor system for dangerous offenders. There's lots of this really great work that's going on in the background, and it is truly transformational. So to conclude, and where we are now.
So obviously, we've got a lot of experience of doing these types of projects, long history of working with the public sector, and getting those transformational aspects of this in place. So rather than just being about technology, but actually about the overall journey and the overall transformation for whichever stakeholder lens we have to be looking at it through. I think it's really important. Obviously, we've got lots of experience with many of the agencies that we've been talking about today. So where do you think the main things are that we can kind of bring to the conversation now as we go through some of the challenges that you both talked about earlier?
Absolutely. For me, this is what we specialize in. This is what we know, and we've had many years experience in trying to understand what better public services look like. We've worked with large Whitehall departments, local authorities, NHS organisations. So we've been involved and are still involved in lots of these systems, in, for example, digitising planning reform, in systems to support international trade with DIT, in shaping great local services such as the housing repairs online service, and the NHS is joining up systems for GP services. We're helping to make all sorts of things better for our citizens across health, housing, crime prevention, safer prisons, and DVLA, a whole range of local services, and including systems in supporting making better weather information and data available with the Met Office. So we love to talk to our customers, existing and new. We offer a service to explore the challenges that our customers are facing. We very often do workshop sessions to help define the problem and help to offer constructive solutions. And we'd love to talk to you. This is how you can contact us.